welcome to the 86'd Life podcast. I'm your host, Neil Strubig. We're going to be discussing the ins and outs of the service industry. The whole point of this podcast will be discussing the reality of the industry, why we're not going to glamorize it by any means. We're going to make sure we focus on the hard points of why all of us become servers, chefs, bartenders, and the stigmas that come with that. For as interesting as it is with the service industry, it's a profession that, for whatever reason, has that said stigma with it, to where many diners and eaters that go out look down upon, I think, a lot of servers, a lot of bartenders, and even at times chefs, even though chefs are kind of the cool profession, if you will, now. It's kind of sad when you look at it that way, but the reality is that's the nature of it. And the whole purpose of today's show is to break down that stigma. But before we get started, give a little backstory on me and the whole reason behind this said show. I've spent my entire life in the actual service industry. Started off back in high school as a dishwasher, working my way up from a lonely little Italian restaurant in Easton, PA, to next thing I know, I was working at a cheesesteak joint, and eventually, actually, a pita pit close to Saucon Valley, PA, actually. It was in Southern Lehigh, and kind of weird to humble beginnings, go from a dishwasher to fast food, but the quick order food service, I think, is where a lot of us end up getting the taste of the rush, if you will. It's not glamorous by any means, but as you know, 15, 16-year-old kid, and then by the time I actually left the quick fire food service, it was about like 17, 18 thereabouts. The next thing I know, I ended up picking up a job in Jersey, of all places. My cousins were kind enough to hire me, basically as their Grandma J chef, at a little old restaurant called Mama's Pizza in Hackettstown, New Jersey. And I think that's where I really got my taste for culinary then. It was Mama Papa restaurant, and a lot of Mama Papa restaurants end up running a little bit wild, if you will. They end up being just a little bit too crazy, always short-staffed, a lot of nonsense going on, and it's nothing against them, but you gotta cut corners when you can sometimes. In those places, you learn real fast if this industry is really for you or not. And from there, I definitely learned it was for me. I could handle the rush, and next thing I know, I left there after about 2 years and took an opportunity at the Sands Casino in Bethlehem. And that's, I think, really where the love for cooking and the love for the industry really took off for me. I ended up working at St. James Pub and Carvery in the Sands Casino, their first restaurant that actually opened there. And shortly after that, I left for Emerald's Chop House in the same said casino. And I think it was there that I just kind of fell in love with the group I was with. I had a lot of talented chefs that took me under their wing. Stacy Kyles, Willie Romero, Mark Yunt. They all kind of saw potential in me, where I think a lot of times I was a nervous bee, if you will. All I wanted to do was just kind of be a sponge, absorb, and prove to these guys that I was worth them keeping me on and bringing me on. But as I digress, when you fall into categories like that, and when I say categories, it's really just the nature of the business, to where I never went to culinary school. I probably had no business cooking to the level I actually cooked at, but those guys really took me under their wing and really showed me what this is all about. This industry is really kind of what you put into it is what you get out of it. From front of house and back of house, it's a weird concept that I think a lot of people don't understand, and it's almost like a fraternity, if you will, and I hate to use Greek life like that. But it really is. Unless you're in it, you really don't know. And that's what I really want to break down with this show in particular. Before we get started, I'll do a quick commercial break, and then we'll get back to it. And to note then, too, actually I moved out here to Pittsburgh. I ended up actually working at 2 country clubs after I left the Sands Casino, and still stayed in it to this day and been working in it for about 8 years now. And the weird thing about the service industry, it has a weird way of keeping you attached into it. It's strange in that regards, to where even though now I'm out here in Pittsburgh doing the journalism thing, doing the podcast thing, it's a weird sense to where there's still a part of me that will always love the industry. And as I mentioned before, not coming from a culinary background as far as a formal education, going to school, when your passion is that said rush, it's really, really hard to ever let go of that adrenaline and the intensity and the satisfaction you get from handling the stress that comes with this industry. And as I mentioned before, with the stigmatism that's come in to the industry itself, and this negative perception of, if you're a 30, 40-year-old server, you look down upon, even with some bartenders depending on the restaurants, and even with chefs. And I joked, I wasn't regarded as a chef even in my hometown until I went to Emerald's Chop House. Even out here, when I worked at the country clubs, so the Longview Country Club and Allegheny Country Club, it wasn't until I actually took an stage at Butcher and the Fry that my friends actually regarded me as something. And It's nothing to denounce any of those spots or even my friends and family for that matter. It's just the association that most people that go out to dine, they have a preconceived notion of A, say restaurant they're going to, and B, what to expect. If it's an Olive Garden, they expect just that routine franchise kind of service. If they got to a place like Bar Marco, Dish down in Southside, they expect a bit higher level of service. And that's all well and good, but for whatever reason, if you're in between that said category or it's something outside someone's comfort zones, they immediately don't know how to understand that. And I think that's where the stigmatism comes in, especially with serving, bartending, and culinary. And those are the three main facets of this industry itself. And as I digress too, I'll throw out a couple numbers as well. The service industry itself accounts for almost 10% of the actual workforce itself. 10%. It's over 14 million people. That's absolutely insane. It's actually projected this year too, according to the National Restaurant Association, to make $783 billion. That's legitimately 4% of the United States gross domestic product. 4% of the nation's GDP is from the service industry. How the hell do people look at servers, bartenders, and chefs, depending where they're at, and look down on them? That makes no sense to me at all. 0 sense. And quite frankly, I don't think that should be the case. So what I aim to do here on this actual first launch, on this first official show, is break down those said stigmas in those three categories. And first and foremost, start with serving. It's the most commonplace. And for whatever reason, I think servers get the most abuse from restaurant goers. And that, I'll be honest with you, it breaks my heart. Even now, I'm actually working as a server part-time as I go to college and I do my freelance routines. And I'm fortunate enough to been in the industry long enough to know what to expect, but I've seen a lot of good servers, a lot of good people too, come and go from different restaurants I've worked in because of the abuse they take and they just can't hack it. All it takes is one bad night. And that's weird to me because when you look at a server's job, first and foremost, it's basically to introduce themselves and get comfortable with strangers. It's like going up on the street, going up to a complete random stranger, introducing yourself, and making them comfortable enough to talk to you and listen to you. That's an extremely difficult thing to do and an invaluable skill set to have as well. Then when you add in the actual formality of the said job, you're there to inform, educate, and provide a memorable experience for clientele. That's key. You're providing a memory. And that goes for all three facets with bartending and culinary, which I'll get to later on. It's providing that memory, that notion that these clients want to come back and dine at said location. That's extremely tough to do, especially when you consider the fact that a complete stranger selling you all this. That's nuts. And then you have the other attribute to where you may be, okay, take myself for example, doing the part-time server gig in college still, doing the freelance thing. I have a lot of plate spinning at all times, constantly. Know a lot of other friends too, same college, also serving, working in the service industry. Is that a reason then to look down on servers? Is because they're not quote unquote living the professional world? Yet you have servers from other various avenues in the actual nation itself making 70,000, 80,000, sometimes even 100,000 a year. You talk to the manager game and everything else, you're talking those numbers. But servers in Michelin-ranked cities, there's only 4 in the U.S. right now: New York, Chicago, San Fran, and Washington, D.C. which actually just got ranked this past year in May 2016 to make it 4 Michelin-ranked cities in the United States. However, with those said numbers too, where servers are making upwards of $50K a year, New Orleans is also one of them. And how the hell is New Orleans on there without a Michelin star? Me personally, it's because the French influence in New Orleans puts the emphasis on serving. They treat it like a profession because it is. Why we aren't doing that out here in Pittsburgh, that's tough to say, right? Me personally, I think it's because Pittsburghers know how to eat, they don't know how to quite dine yet, which again is what I'm trying to break down tonight. What's the difference between eating and dining? We'll get to that. The server's job is to basically help you understand that difference. That's what to actually know the menu right out of the gates, tell you everything about it. We're talking, if you have 3 different proteins on the menu, whether you have 30 proteins on the menu, they should know all the meats and plots going on that dish, all the sides, how it's prepared, how to pair it with said beverage list on the menu as well. At the same time too, be sure to tell you what the difference is. There's a couple various things in the menus, and I've seen it countless times, to where diners are afraid to get something that they might actually think tastes good because they don't know what's in it. And it cracks me up on this. Like, I've had family members, friends, I got to eat with them, and a server comes up, introduces themselves, starts talking about the menu, gets the drinks orders, yada yada, leaves, and then my father, my mother, my brother, they're asking me, be like, what the heck is mesa? And I'll start cracking up. And I'm like, ask the server. Now, mesa is just cornmeal, basically. It's based as corn flour. But it's a fancy way of saying it. Well, I shouldn't say fancy. It's actually the correct way of saying it. But to the untrained eye, untrained diner, they have no idea. And 9 times out of 10, most diners are steer clear out of something that they're not aware of. Something against that's just human nature to avoid anything that's not in our comfort zones. We all like our comfort zones. And then you have even two. You got guanciale, which is just pork cheeks, pork cow. So many customers are still clear of that because it's a fancy Italian word for pork cheeks. But yet, who doesn't love pork, cured pork? Who doesn't love it? I know I do. I could be eating prosciutto right now. But I digress, though. That whole server's job, though, is to break down that barrier that diners come in with, that they're afraid to sit there and try something new. It's basically restaurants' first line of offense. As soon as you come into a said restaurant, you sit down. You know, you might have been meted by the hostess. Hostess sat you down. You get a good feel for the place, the atmosphere, you know, the music's going on. Decor's nice. Seems like everybody around you having a good time. It's swell. It's awesome. And then all of a sudden, strange dude, strange female comes up, starts talking to you. And, you know, maybe go over the menu a little bit. But again, you got to be open to that. You got to be open to the fact that the server is there to help you have a good time. And I think a lot of diners really forget that point. They shouldn't be afraid to go out and eat. Don't ever be afraid to go out to eat. You're going to have to spend money. Servers are aware of that. They're not trying to get your money. Yeah, they live off of tips and everything else, which is a whole other topic for another day. But they're there to make sure you enjoy yourself first and foremost. And I think if you go out to eat with that in mind, that a server is there to guide you in the right direction, you understand that it's okay, one, to ask questions, and two, to trust a professional that's describing the menu to you, describing the drinks to you. They're not trying to sell you things. They're trying to inform you, educate you, and make sure you and your friends, your family, significant others have a hell of a time when you're out there to eat at that said restaurant. That is so important. And I think that's where the stigma comes in, because a lot of diners, a lot of eaters don't get that. They're not aware of that. They take that intimidation, and then they look at it too. And since they don't ask questions, and they're not aware of the intelligence that a server may know on the said menu, the said restaurant, just the science behind food and beverages, because there is a science, they kind of just, one, fall short in their own dining experience, and two, give the servers a bad rap. So what if that said server is, still in high school, still in college? So what if they're 35, 40, 50? You don't know how good they are at their job. I'm not saying test them now either. Don't be a douchebag about it. But don't be afraid to ask a couple questions. So, hey, you don't know much about wine. You want to try some wine, maybe out on a date? Valentine's Day is coming up. Ask them about the wine. Tell them what you like. Be like, hey, you know what? I really like reds. I like high tannins. Want a little bit of, medium body, though. You'll be surprised at what they may end up showing you. And it may introduce you to a brand new bottle of wine that you've never even had before that just blows your socks off. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't stick to your comfort zones. Trust a professional that's talking to you. Now, I bring up wine because wine, for whatever reason, always has that same intimidation factor to clients and to patrons. A lot of people don't actually know much about wine, and rightfully so. It definitely here in Pittsburgh, I think, it has a high society notion to it. And there's very few sommeliers here in Pittsburgh as well, which I won't go into the sommelier discussion today, but I think the presence of sommelier can definitely help curve that, which actually was a topic of my conversation, article I wrote for the Pittsburgh Magazine in this February edition, and the sommeliers here in Pittsburgh. But I digress. Even without a psalm, servers do know the wine menu, and they should. It's part of their job. And shouldn't it be because, hey, you see a young server approaching you that you shouldn't ask them about the said menu? If I go into a bank and I see a bank teller, I'm not going to just act like they don't know how to handle a loan or where to steer me in the direction. Now, granted, it's a couple different steps, but they still are aware of what to do and how to make sure that I'm going to get the care I deserve. In the service industry, those steps of service are much more acute. They are much more honed to a personal base, which is a good thing. Now, what are those steps of service and how important are they? Well, like I said, for a server, first thing to do is inform and engage. Now, I say inform, it's a simple salutation. That salutation immediately creates an engagement. And then after that, it's educating the said clients. And as I go more into it, everything else comes into play as far as the awareness and understanding what a table needs, what a client needs, and what else is going on. At no point in time does a server on a busy Saturday night have just one table. They have 5, 6, 7, 10, 8, maybe even 12 depending on the restaurant. Now 12 is going a bit much. No one's going to get extraordinary service if one person has 12 tables, but got to exaggerate at times. But even still, normal Saturday night, you're dealing with 4 tables at once, at least. Any said restaurant. How the hell is that not worthy of a job? How the hell is a a server, not in the 4 Michelin rated cities, not regarded as a legitimate professional? That's crazy. Think about the multitasking comes in the profession. Think about that. They have to, one, talk to 4 different tables, keep them all entertained, maybe inform one more than the other. Maybe they have to go over what difference between a Cabernet Sauvignon is versus Chianti. You're talking big body wine versus medium body wine. Maybe have to go in more details about the region. Maybe you have to break down simplicity of just an arugula salad with a nice little vinaigrette. And, again, be aware of allergies. Every component of that said dish, maybe there's peanuts in it, maybe there's not. Maybe the vinaigrette has a touch of tree nuts in it. Maybe it's Magolio. You don't know. But the server does. So, server informs them. You ask the server as well. They have to be aware of that, but as they're talking to you, they also realize that, table 3 over there, the water's getting low. They have to go, bing, bang, boom, fill up waters, maybe a couple more salutations, greetings, hey, check in, how's everything going? And then they got to go put orders in, communicate with the chefs. At all times, their mind is all over the place. It's constant multitask. I don't know any other job that multitasks and demands as much awareness than the service industry. I mean, air traffic controllers, yeah, sure, absolutely. Outside of that, most of the jobs in today's society that demand a high level of respect, say doctors, teachers, engineers, absolutely insanely educated people, and rightfully so, but not necessarily a high stress in the grand scope of things, especially not the type of stress that servers, bartenders, and chefs have. It's different. It's compacted. It's like NASCAR. Honestly, it might be even NASCAR on steroids depending where you're at. It's absolutely adrenaline-filled, absolutely intense, nonstop, go, 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 go. But that stigma is still there, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my damn heart. It really does. That most clients out there don't understand what servers go through, and they really, really should. And now the same goes for bartenders. Bartenders may not get the same venomous judgment as servers because bartenders, one, they're serving you drink. No one's going to get mad at the guy getting them drunk, or the girl getting them drunk for that matter. No one's going to get mad at anybody that's saucing you up. But why are they regarded more highly than servers? It's because typically if you're at a bar, the bartender's within earshot of you, within range. The judgment there, you don't want to be rude and be judgmental, but if a server walks away, you can critique them a bit more harshly. Well, shame on you if you do that. Well, maybe you just think bartending is easier, depending on how you look at it. I mean, surely a bartender in a dive bar, that's easy, right? I don't think so. Even at a dive bar, the lowest level of a bartender status, you're still dealing with multitudes of people. Multitudes. Mostly are regulars. Most of them end up staying there for 3-4 hours. Sometimes you get a good drunkard in there, they're staying there for 8-10 hours. Now, at what point in time, too, do you have to keep them happy? Also keep maybe an unapproachable customer also aware and create new customers that come in. Now, again, it's easier said than done when you're serving alcohol and everyone's having a good time when they're drinking. But still, there's a certain science and personality, an acute personality that comes with being a dive bar bartender. And again, it comes with that multitude of awareness, understanding. One, you don't want to overserve somebody, but you're also serving cheap drinks. People are going to drink more than their share fill sometimes. But you're still managing a number of different customers. It's crazy. I don't know a single dive bar that doesn't have a full bar come Saturday night, 10 o'clock. I don't care if you're only making, I shouldn't say making, just serving Jello shots, making Jackson Cokes all night. There's a certain level of multitasking and personality that is unmatched in any other profession, period. It's not like retail on Black Friday. No, it's not just a one shift. It's a weekly, nightly thing. And that is tough to do. And then, for whatever reason, that comes back to the location you're at. So, a dive bar down at, nowhere. I would say Mount Washington, you can give any spots up there or go north side's got a couple dive bars. Shits and giggles would say Permanis out here in Pittsburgh. No disrespect to Permanis, we all love it. But Permanis is not exactly a bar you're going to go to and perhaps expect phenomenal service. But it's still stressful. You're dealing with various peoples from all corners of the world. Tourists, locals, drunkards, college kids, families, and you're supposed to serve them either at the bar or at tables and still manage your professionalism with the said service. That's extremely, extremely tough to do. But you wouldn't regard that bartender Permanis, who's dealing with 6 different demographics throughout the night, with the same respect as a bartender at Allegheny Wine Mixer, at Bar Marco's, down at Butch and the Rye or Taco. Why is that? And at Spoon, surely not. No, by God, no. I mean, at Spoon, you expect just awesome service. So why the hell is there a difference in the expectation? First off, the standard across the board, big, small, dive bar, non-dive bar, diner, 5-star restaurant. The standard is, again, creating that memorable experience for the customer. Everybody in this industry that's good and has any sort of weight or success in this industry knows and understands that and values that point. But however, with the bartender aspect, if you start off at a dive bar, work your way up, it's going to be the same sense to where I felt. I wasn't a chef until I had a restaurant that people could associate with. Now, bartenders down at Bar Marco, Butch and the Rye, I'm just naming a couple marquee pivots in the Pittsburgh scene. Why are these bartenders more regarded than bartenders at dive bars? Same kind of thing. Now, granted, they make more difficult drinks, and the mixology is kind of cool. Not everyone knows what's a Negroni, what's a Sazerac. Not everyone knows how to switch up a Manhattan. And all three of those drinks are much, much different than pouring a pint glass and sliding it down the bar. But I've gone to Butch and the Rye, I've gone to Bar Marco, I've gone to these spots. I've gotten some just atrocious service. I'm not saying that's the case all the time, but I've gotten phenomenal service at dives, and I've gotten bad service at more upscale places. So should I go in there expecting one thing compared to the other? No. You got to go with an open mind, open care. But as far as the bartender, just because they know that a Negroni should not be shaken doesn't necessarily mean that they're better than a server. And now, again, I'm not trying to say one facet of this industry is more difficult than the other. They all are difficult in their own regards. But as Pittsburgh's food scene has been growing, it seems that the bartender has now become the hip thing. Chefs are still the coolest, they're still the top notch. Everyone wants to be a chef, which is just crazy because it's probably the most stressful job out there. But with bartending, it comes down to just the passion, the fun of drinking. If you're drinking, you're having a good time, and who gives you the good time? The dude making the alcohol. So, does that mean bartenders are more skilled than servers? Depends on the location. Now, you go down to a bar like Acacia down south side, by all means, those guys are some of the best bartenders in the city. But they also are well aware, and their standard is much different. Those guys want to make sure they give you good drinks. They want to inform you. They want to make sure that you're aware of what you're drinking, and they want to make sure they know your taste and what to expect. They're not just going to pour you some 12-aged whiskey or bourbon on the rocks and get you out. They'll make sure you're there for a good time. And that, honestly, is the essence of service in general. But with the bartenders, and the problem I see with a lot of people, and it's really just unfair, but it's the reality of it, is that fact that they don't hold bartenders to the same harsh criticism as servers. And even with bartenders too, you're not always dealing with menus and everything else, but in all three facets of this industry, as I'm breaking it down, all three are codependent on each other. Drink service is only as good as your service. If servers can't sell the drinks, doesn't matter how talented your bartender is behind the bar. If she's not getting orders for said drinks, then forget about it. No one's going to know how awesome her Sazerac is. No one's going to know. Now, if your servers don't explain the menu, though, either, no one's going to know how good that said food is. No one's going to know how good that chimichurri with the flank steak and the roasted fingerling potatoes are. No one's going to know. It's all codependent on each other. And ironically, and I think why bartenders get the out, is because we sometimes forget that food could be bad. Service could be great. You're not going to remember the great service. You're probably going to remember the food stunk. The service could be terrible. The food was great. You remember the great food. You might go back, you might not. Interesting enough. But maybe you had to wait, 20 minutes for a beer. You forgot about it because other things were on your mind, perhaps the bad service, perhaps the great food, vice versa. Bartenders got the out. Maybe everything else kind of stunk, but all those Manhattans you had with the tits, they were awesome. They're phenomenal. So, you kind of forgot about everything else then. The bartender gets the out on that. Interesting. So, I'm not, again, trying to say that bartending is easier than one or the other. They're all codependent on each other. And I think it's just a shame that the mixology, which is extremely tough to do, and there's a science to that, isn't appreciated either the way serving should be appreciated. We'll look at just making a typical Negronis themselves. Most people don't know what they are. It's 3-ounce drink, old drink. Should never be shaken, always stirred. But it literally is just ounce Campari, ounce of gin, ounces of vermouth. Simple as that. You can always add modifications, change it up, nice little orange peel for garnish. Nothing too crazy. But if you don't chill the glass down, let's say you just mix that in ice, the drink's still going to suck. You got to chill the glass. You got to worry about temperatures. There is a legitimate art form in mixology. And that is when I think places like the Bar Marcos, the dishes, Stagionis, the Acacias, the spoons, that's, yes, where the bartenders then perhaps get more of an out because that expectation is greater inside the dive bar. But the basics level of service is still going to be the same. They're still there to sit you at the bar, greet you, inform you, engage, and create that memorable experience for you. That's across the board, as it should be. But I don't think diners are aware of that. They just go in expecting one thing, either said great drink, quality service, perhaps great food. There's no reason not to expect great service, great drinks, great food, and also be cognizant as a diner for all three. It's part of the industry itself. All three, like I said, are reliant on one another. Now, before I digress more into the standard and daily life of these said servers, bartenders, chefs, something that I've been a part of my whole life, it's the insanity of the industry that keeps us in it. It is a very unique club, and hopefully the service industry members and employees out there, I'm laying down, hopefully some of the listeners here will understand what I'm trying to put down and go out to eat and dine and realize like, well, man, I never thought of it like this. Before I get to that said standard and why we all do what we do and why persons like myself take this with such a strong affliction or personal tenacity, I'm going to go into the last bit of the culinary side of things. As I said, we got 3 stages. We got the serving, the bartending, and now the culinary. For whatever reason, being a chef is the bee's knees. It's a cool profession. I joke about all 3 facets, as I already have, that it's weird to me to where the restaurant can really define your skill level, which is not always the case. I've worked with some extremely talented chefs in mama papa restaurants that never had a chance to shine, and maybe it was personal problems, the family, kind of had them stapled down. Maybe they didn't have the income to move or go where else, or they were kind of afraid to take those said chances. Who knows? I've also worked with some just terrible chefs, marquee restaurants and destination. Nothing wrong with that, but you had other guys picking the slack because once you get to that level, everyone's kind of on the same page. Now, granted, those guys didn't last long. My point is, you could have a terrible chef at Spoon, and you can have a great chef at Primanti's. Who knows? I mean, he may be making Primanti's sandwiches, but on his off time, the guy is sitting there and he's maybe just playing some stuff for staff meal, just for shits and giggles. Who knows? My point is, the restaurant does not necessarily make the chef, the bartender, or the server. Now, the culinary side, though. Why on earth everybody loves it, I have no idea. And I can talk more freely and passionately about this side because it's something I did for 7 years, and I've loved it, still love it. But there's nothing cool about being a chef. It's absolutely insane. You're on your feet, well, in all 3 facets. You're on your feet 50, 60 hours a day. You're constantly thinking about food. It's like going into a battle every day. You put your chef whites on, you go in there, you start prepping, get your meats and plots ready. And by meats and plots, I mean basically you're set up for the station. Get your shallots, you get your herbs ready, any sort of little small dices, minces, whatever you need to fit the menu for the restaurant you got that day. You get all that ready, and you basically buckle yourself in and wait for tickets and orders to start rolling in. And you just bang each one out with precision, consistency. Just like that bartender is going to bang out those said drinks with precision, dedication, consistency. Just like that server is going to approach every table with the same consistency, dedication, and passion. You see where I'm going with this? That said standard is self-imposed. It's something that's bred into us. As soon as you get in this industry and as soon as you love it, you learn that it is more than just a job. It is literally an absolute put everything you have into it job. Is that not a profession? Is that not basically the definition of profession? It's literally going to school, educating yourself, to completely commit yourself to a said occupation. A lot of us are doing multiple things when we're in this said profession, in all 3 facets, but yet it's still looked down upon. And I think that's the biggest travesty there is. And especially when it comes to culinary, with the whole aspect of, depending on where you are, can really determine who you are. And I use my own experience for this. And, I worked at St. James and Sands Casino. My family was like, oh yeah, Neil's cooking. And then all of a sudden I went to Emerald's Chop House in the same location. And my family started telling everybody I'm a chef. Now, chef and the cook terms, conversation for another day, because there is a difference. But we're talking, I was doing 5-course wine dinners, I was prepping, putting up rotisseries, creating the music plots, pretty much every little thing I was doing at St. James, I did at Emerald's as well. Now, perhaps there's a slight difference in degree. Clientele's a bit different, a bit stricter on plates and the precision of, hey, if you have a little bit of puree spilled on the plate, it doesn't go out. But we kept that same level of professionalism at St. James. Yet St. James is regarded as an Irish pub. Even though we had a whole rotisserie section, we did everything from scratch. Everything was a la minute. We did our own pastries in-house, but yet that perception was, oh, it's just, grow, grab a Guinness, maybe a black and tan, have some pub fries, and, while you're at it, grab me a slice of the prime rib there. But then at Emerald's, oh, no. You were expected then. We have over 100 bottles of wine. You expected there to sit there for a couple courses a meal. All the servers that are wearing, green shirts there and all black aprons, suits and ties, different ambiance. Same level of cooking, but perception was you're getting something different. Now, again, I'm not knocking either restaurants. Both are phenomenal. I know a lot of my knowledge to those said guys. All the staff at those spots. But it was weird then, too, out here in Pittsburgh. I was at the country club. Country club, no one can relate to it. All my friends, the Allegheny Country Club for 2 years. They sat there and they're like, oh man, you're still doing the cooking thing. I mean, while I'm still doing a chef thing at Allegheny Country Club. But I took an stage. I was thinking about going to Butcher and the Rye before they opened up Taco. And all of a sudden my friends were like, oh my God. And they were criticizing me for not taking the job. Now, why I didn't take it, that's on me. And story for another day on that as well. But why the hell was the perception any different? Because they couldn't relate to country club. They don't know what the food is expect. Those expectations that diners come in with is why the stigmatism is there. Yet, no matter what, my professionalism was the same at St. James. My work ethic was the same at St. James as it was at Emerald's. My professionalism, my work ethic, my consistency, and my willingness to deliver a memorable product was the same at St. James, Emerald's, and Allegheny Country Club. So why the difference in perception? It's because the stigma exists because no one understands the actual standard that we put ourselves to. And it's a self-imposed standard. So how the hell is it going to have anybody know? How can anyone understand that we put this onus on us to go out there every night as a server, to sit there and tell you, hey, you know what? You want to come out here have a good time? Let's have a good time. I'm going to tell you what's good on the menu. You're going to tell me maybe, hey, I'm a vegetarian. Okay, cool. I'm going to tell you every vegetarian dish we have and everything you should check out to fit your means. That bartender's going to go up like, hey, you know what? I love gin, hate bourbon. What do you got? Well, you know what? Hey, bourbon barb, I'm still going to hook you up. Make you the best goddamn gin drink I got. Bingo, bango, boom. Same thing with chefs. We may not see the actual customers and clientele, but we go in there and we tell ourselves, I'm going to bang this food out today. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to kick some serious ass. I'm going to make sure everything I send out is pristine, precise, and goddamn perfect. And that's all self-imposed. We're not just doing that because it's our job. Our job is to make sure y'all have that memory and that experience that you can share, tell families. Because we want you to know the feelings we have when a customer leaves a smile on their face, tells them that's the best damn service they ever got, or tells them that's the best damn drink they ever had, or tells them that's the best damn plate they ever had. That's what it's all about. And I think that's tough to define for people that aren't in the industry or haven't lived a day in the industry. And like I said before at the beginning of the show, it's absolutely insane to me to sit there and think that the service industry should be looked down upon without Michelin stars or anything else. It takes so much skill. I don't know a single other profession either that needs so much self-awareness and puts so much onus on said individual. And perhaps that's why some people can't connect, because yes, it's team-oriented, but a lot of the onus is on you. That's the standard that's ingrained into us. And what is that? What is that standard, actually? I think I'll take a quick break, and I'm going over that standard. Now, back to the actual standard itself. We talk about the standard, and when I talk about the standard, as much as I say it's self-imposed, it definitely is. It's the expectations we bring to our own table. Just like a doctor ends up coming in, and he has his own expectations, his own code, and his own doctor-to-patient expectations. Maybe the doctor's a terrible reference on that, because it's... No, it is personal. You have confidence in the doctors that you go to. Hopefully you do, at least. I feel like a lot of clients don't have confidence in themselves to trust the server or the bartender across the way, sometimes even the chefs for that matter. And there's preconceived notions, and whatever your friends tell you, who are you going to trust? A bunch of strangers, or your friends that tell you so and such a place is, the drinks are good, the food's good, service is bad, or, the service is really good, servers are really friendly, but, the food was kind of lacking, it was too salty, or this or that, and, just fickle stuff. And it's because diners don't see our professional. They don't see us as professionals. They should. And I come back to the Michelin stars. As soon as you get a Michelin star, the whole city changes. Hopefully, in my lifetime out here, Pittsburgh will get a Michelin star, I hope. Once you get them, all of a sudden, it becomes a destination. Something becomes a destination, that said standard across the board may not necessarily change to us in the industry. We may elevate ourselves, push ourselves a bit more, like any profession that's moving forward will. But all of a sudden, those preconceived notions from the clients change. And to me, that's interesting. And it's also wrong. Michelin star or not, all of us in the industry hold ourselves accountable for providing that memory. And if we don't inform, engage, and make sure y'all have a good time, we put it on ourselves. And I could see judgment from listeners, then they'll be like, there's no way you're telling me a college kid is going home and kicking an imaginary bucket, being pissed off at himself because, he messed up 2-3 orders. And I'm telling you, you're freaking wrong. I can count on numerous occasions as a chef and as a server, even as a dishwasher. I was 16, for Christ's sakes, to where I messed up, someone else had to pick up the slack, and or I just didn't make a customer happy. I beat myself up about it. Now, granted, you bounce back and everything else, but I legitimately was like, you know what? I forgot that dude's order. He ordered a pork loin, and I completely forgot about it. Didn't fire it. Or, hey, chef said, hey, 2 salmons mid-rare. I overcooked them, and now this guy's got to wait another freaking 6 minutes. Shame on me, and I'm guaranteeing you, I went home, I was just like, I'm better than that. I can do better than that. And the next day I went in, made sure it didn't happen. Now, granted, mistakes, they happen like any profession. But there's no one sitting there guaranteed telling me if day in, day out, hey, don't do this, don't do that. We all go into a restaurant in all 3 facets. We bring our experience with us. We bring our knowledge with us. We go into a restaurant, we know their menu. You learn it. You do your pre-meals, your pre-shifts. Perhaps you even discuss a little bit at the end of shift, the closing ceremony, if you will. But we all bring our experience and knowledges in, and we all mesh to fit those said restaurants. But the standards that we've learned and we've imposed on ourselves of that quality service, that quality standard, the awareness that comes with being a server, pushing around 4 different tables, making sure all 23 of your clientele at one given time, all happy, all have smiles on their faces, and each one of them knows what they're getting, and hopefully they asked you what to get and you steered them in the direction that they're now smiling about. Same thing with bartenders then too. They have full bar, talking 20, 30 different drinks going at once. They're making sure each one of those is perfect. Each one of those is the right temperature. Each one of those is not just a shade off in their ratios. Each one is going to hit that customer's palate and not just get them drunk so they have a good time, but makes them be like, holy crap, that was an absolute phenomenal Lucien got in. Same thing with chefs. We go in there and we know we need to make our mise en place. If we don't make our mise en place, then we're going to end up being left behind. One, our fellow chefs are going to make fun of us. You all know the locker room here and everything else that goes into being a kitchen. We're going to call it a bunch of names I can't say on air. But we all know that's going to happen. But we make sure we go into mise en place to make sure we have success that said night. To make sure you don't have to wait for your food. To make sure that if a server, maybe a table's holding up, whatever else, they don't have to wait for their food to be in the window. We're going to make sure everything is on point. Everything we're sending out has a piece of us in it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for diners to understand is that, like every profession, you put yourself into it, and the service industry itself demands. You got to put your whole heart and soul into it because it's an extremely stressful environment that really has no break. It's go, go, go. There's no ceasefire. As soon as that rush hits, you're locked in, you're ready to go. And I don't know too many professions that have that intensity. And I think that's why we have that club mentality of unless you are in it, you don't know. Because it is crazy. It is absolutely crazy to work on your feet for 8, 10, 12 hours. And sure, servers tend to work a little bit less, but still, most servers, even though they may be on the floor for 5, 6 hours, they end up being there for 8, 9, 10 hours anyway because you don't see all the work they have to do in the back, all the side work, rolling up silverware, polishing glassware. You also don't see them coming in early before the restaurant even opens, setting up the restaurant. Bartenders and chefs, for whatever reason, again, I think because they're hip and they're cool and people just want to know how to make drinks, want to know how to make great food, and something they can, look up on Pinterest and have fun with in their house, get that kind of pass to the common consumer. But all of them are sitting there putting their heart and soul into it. And that's something that is so, so rare, man. When you get hit with the rush, and we all are on the same page, and we all know we put every fiber of our being into making sure the rush went off, and I can't quite describe it to those that have not been in it, but on a Saturday night to when your restaurant's at capacity. You know you're going to be in the weeds for a given portion of the night. And not weeded to where you can handle your business, but weeded that good of, hey, you know what? If I slip up once, something might go wrong. And when you don't slip up and you're on your game that much, and the rest of your team is, it's euphoric. There's no feeling like that. Because you know you just made sure X amount of customers had the best possible service experience you could have offered them. It's like being on Wall Street and making your first $1 million trade. It is euphoric. And when that happens then, and since we have a profession that's run on that adrenaline and that intensity of don't slip up, you're almost working on eggshells, if you will. It leads to a long cooling down process. We get out, we work late hours, all of us do. You get out 11, midnight, after midnight, 1, 2 a.m., like any job. You work a 9 to 5, you get back home, throw on some Netflix, start making yourself some food, pet your dog, take your dog for a walk, come back, eat your food, sit on the couch, and you unwind until whatever your bedtime is. You know, maybe it's 9 p.m., maybe it's 10, maybe it's midnight, whatever. Then you get up, you get your 6 to 8 hours of sleep, and you do it all over again. Monotonous, boring, and, well, doesn't matter as long as it pays the bills, right? For us, though, not so much of a case. We get out, we're wired. It's like taking 3 shots of espresso and then asking yourself to relax. Or we're so worn down, but our mind is running 100 miles an hour because we just had to sit there and multitask 1,000 different things in the course of a night. So our body might be fatigued, but our mind is running on just sheer adrenaline, sheer caffeinated just nonsense. So it takes us 2-3 hours, maybe 4, to unwind, just like anybody in a 9 to 5 job. You unwind that whole time when you get back home, that 2-3 hours, 4 hours, whatever you need. Our problem is when we do that, by the time we actually are relaxed, body, mind, and soul, we realize it's 4, 5, maybe even 6 a.m. in the morning. So now we're just going to bed. So now on a regular, even stressed out schedule to where we might get 6 hours of sleep, we're waking up at noon. And maybe that's why that stigma is there. It's because everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, you wake up at noon, you gotta be lazy. No, it's a different time frame. And again, you can't understand what you can't relate. It creates a stigma as well. We all work on weekends. We don't have a normal life. We don't get to enjoy holidays like everybody else. We don't get to enjoy Saturday nights like everybody else. We have to work. And this is not a complaint or anything else. This is a confession of the fact that we want to be there and we want to do it. And this is what I keep talking about, the self-imposed standard. We're making that sacrifice to provide clients with the memory. And God damn it, I hope that 10 out of 10, anytime myself or anyone I've worked with or anyone else I know in the industry can provide that for those customers. And that's what it's all about. But it's a strange thing to when people don't realize the sacrifice we put into it, and we're forced into this fraternity, if you will, because no one understands that you're up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning routinely because you have to go. Maybe you grab a couple drinks with friends. Maybe you just shoot the shit after work for a little bit, discussing maybe the night's events or just, hey, life in general. Just like anything, you would go out to happy hour with your friends doing the same thing. But that's a reasonable time frame. 5 to 7 p.m. is reasonable for most people. Doing the same thing at 1:30, 2 a.m. or pushing yourself to last call and staying until the bar closes at 3, that's crazy. You only do that on Friday, Saturday nights when you and your friends are trying to get sloshed on the South Side. That's wild. But no, it's not. Not when you look at it in the sense of we do the same exact thing y'all are doing, except our happy hour isn't 5 to 7. It's 1 to 2 a.m. And when you put that together and you put that in perspective, you realize that what we're doing is not much different than anybody else. It is just different. And hopefully you get the Wes Anderson image from Fantastic Mr. Fox when I say different, because it is somewhat unexplainable unless you are in it. But that's the whole point of this show, and that's what I want the 86'd life for y'all to understand, is that we do this because there's a passion for it. We do it not because it's misunderstood, but we do it because we feel a need to it. And why we're all drawn into the industry is compelling in its own right. Why we all stay in it is compelling in its own right. I stay in the industry because, goddamn, I love the rush. I love the adrenaline that comes with it. I know guys that stay in the industry because all they ever wanted to do was just cook. I know servers that stay in it because, you know what? They had their own businesses. They did the college thing. They became artists. They did all that. But they're like, you know what? There's no industry that gave me as much satisfaction as the service industry. So they come back, and they still do it. And there ain't a damn thing wrong with that. And I salute everyone in the industry, and I hope more people understand the standard, and I hope every facet of the industry continues to respect the standard. And that's all I got for tonight, guys. But thank you for listening to the 86'd Life. I want to thank Andrew Conti and his staff at the Center of Media Innovation here at Point Park University, where I'm actually hosting this show. I'll be coming in next show with a couple guests and we'll be discussing some wine culture and what it's like to deal with some highbrow clientele, if you will, and what goes into that process, and breaking down the concept of wine tasting and that culture, and why it's such a surprise stigma and intimidation factor that comes with it. But again, I want to thank you. I'm your host, Neil Streebig. This is the 86'd Life.